anticipating part. This is where you are planning and preparing. How did you plan for today's lesson?
As I planned for today's lesson, anticipating what the students were going to go, what they were going to know, we were starting a new investigation, which is patterns. So I looked at the first lesson, and it was just really simple A-B patterns. And I knew they already knew patterns. We had already discussed it a little bit, so I knew they knew patterns. And so I looked at the next unit, and it was skip counting. Same thing, just looking at patterns, but skip counting by twos. And they're really good at skip counting by twos, and so I went on to the third lesson, and that was skip counting by threes. So I anticipated they were just going to zoom through the first lesson and the second lesson, which they pretty much did. And when we got to skip counting by threes, for them to identify that unit as the green being the skip counting by threes. Some of the groups got it, but I had to kind of gauge them, or not gauge them. I had to give them some clues and to really see it. Some didn't even see it at all. So I think my anticipation on where they were going to be really independent and good at getting the lesson, my anticipation was correct.
Yeah, I saw that the dragons who answer a lot of the questions, Emma in there, they didn't get that pattern, did they?
No.
I wonder why. Do you have an idea?
I think because they're not really looking at the number that's associated with the color. We haven't done enough of the pattern number associations. And I think that's why they didn't see it. So the next lesson goes into just identifying more patterns. And I think if I do that more explicitly and creating the pattern and then putting them with the number, with the color, like the blue, red, they were able to see that, oh, all the reds are odd numbers, all the blues are even numbers. So that's, I think, a lot more noticeable to our eyes than the three colors. You really had to dig, and I was trying to point, what do you see, when I was pointing at the 6 and the green? What do you see here? And some of them were like, huh? They couldn't see it. And I think it's because I haven't exposed them enough to that kind of pattern and the number association.
Yeah, so the number sense for, let's say, patterns of threes is not there. So I noticed that you went on all these patterns in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and you were looking at the even and odd pattern. Would it have made a difference if you'd have gone like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, or ABC, ABC, ABC? Do you think that would have made a difference there in terms of your planning, or go back to do that?
I think I would probably go back and do that, do the 1, 2, 3 and the 1, 2, 3. But then I don't know if they'll be able to see that this is a 3 and this is a 6 and this is a 9.
I see.
So they're just going to see, they're going to pick the 1, 2, 3 up quick. I mean, they're going to do that 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, or AB, AB, ABC, ABC. They're going to do that, but I wanted to challenge them more. I wanted them to see, because in the lesson too, it tells you to number them 1 to 9 or 1 to however many cubes you have. They don't do the 1, 2, 1, 2.
Okay, so the lesson was asking them to look at the pattern of 3, 6, 9, 12, and they got it at the end because they were going, I heard they were going up to 21.
Because
then somebody went up 21 and then 27.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, you didn't hear that.
Yeah, we've been practicing skip counting by threes. But one thing in the book that it mentioned that students might say is, oh, there are multiples of 3. But I haven't introduced them to that language yet. We're going to be getting into multiplication here pretty soon. So this is going to be a perfect segue into multiplication.
So after, in the 5 practices, anticipating is preparation and planning, and you use that for your launch. Use that for your launch, anticipating what they were going to respond correctly or their misconceptions. Then the next one is when they get into the explore phase, and you monitor. And I saw you going around each of the groups, What were you looking for?
I was looking for the part where I wanted them to identify that the greens were skip counting by threes.
Okay.
That's what I was looking for. I knew they could I knew they could make the train. I knew they could color correctly. I knew they could number the top, but I really wanted them to notice the skip counting by threes.
Yeah. And you found the last group that went up there, they discussed it, but they didn't write it down.
No,
Is that why
no.
you picked them? Why did you pick that group last?
Because of that reason. I knew they discussed it, and I thought they wrote it down. That's why I brought them up here, so they could read their response. But they didn't write it.
So that's why you selected them.
Yeah.
Now, why do you suppose they didn't write it? Did you work with them a little bit? Did you come by and talk to them?
No, they actually articulated it to me.
Wow.
They told me what else that they noticed. But I think when they ran out of time,
Oh,
because
they
once
just ran out of
once
time.
I say minions, then pencils, everything
Okay.
is down.
So now you monitored them, and then you selected. And why did you pick that particular sequence?
So I chose the dragons first because they were able to identify the 3, 6, 9. I chose them first because they had pretty much everything. They're the exemplar, and because the rest of the groups were really unsure, I wanted to highlight the exemplar. I didn't want to bring up a struggling group that had no idea. I mean, that did the basic, but I wanted to set the stage. I wanted everyone to see that the greens were skip counting by threes.
Okay.
And there's other lessons that I do the opposite. I'll choose the group or the student who didn't have a correct response or if the rest of the kids already had a good grasp of the concept and they're able to identify, no, he did it incorrectly, or this is how he should have done it. But today it was the opposite. They weren't too sure, so I wanted to bring up the group that had it.
Yeah. And in terms of and this is getting more into the last of the 5 practices, and this is the connecting. Why did you choose not only the color and the number, the skip counting by threes, and then you did something that a high school teacher would probably not do, and I think that they should do it, and that's the body movement. Why did you pick that? Why did you have them do a body movement as part of a pattern as well?
Because I think that's one thing that comes natural to us. And if they can do a body movement with any kind of sequence or a pattern, you're including the body kinesthetics. If they can do any kind of motion to it, it's going to be ingrained in their brain a lot more, a lot better.
So it seemed like to me you went from the concrete to the semi-concrete, then to the kinesthetic, and then to the abstraction as well, and you kind of mixed all of those up. So we're going from the concrete to the representational, which is the semi-concrete, semi-abstract, and then to the abstraction, which is counting by threes. But then you added something else, which is the kinesthetic, which is really concrete, isn't it? Because
Very
they're
concrete.
And then bending their knees down. They just weren't practiced.
Yeah.
I mean, if
They
you give
didn't-
them a few more minutes,
Yeah.
they probably would get that. Then they could choreograph the movements.
Yeah. And I think along with that, in elementary, what I've learned, how students learn mathematics, is you give them a variety of strategies. So today if I were to ask them, what strategies did we use? We use connecting cubes. I mean, that's the object. We're making the units with cubes. We did a pattern. That's another strategy. Another strategy is coloring in the cubes on their paper, and then the skip counting by the 2s and the 3s. So you expose them to as many strategies to figure out this one concept, and they take what makes sense to them. So say tomorrow we're doing our next lesson on patterns. They're going to remember what we did today, and then they're going to make those connections. Oh, I remember we did the pattern with So like if I am a kinesthetic learner, oh, we did 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. That's how I'm going to connect for today's lesson.
Yeah.
Or if another kid, oh, I remember the colors, the cubes, like the actual objects. That's how I learn. I'm a hands-on learner. So for like a kid like Emma, she could say, well, I know we skip count it by threes, or it's all it's mental. A lot of the kids, very abstract.
She thinks
yeah.
abstractly.
And so that's the difference between elementary and high school. High school, teacher says this is one way, there's only one way, and that's how we solve this problem. But for us, we have multiple ways of doing one thing.
Yeah, and actually, I think I was a high school teacher, so we can use those same methods actually, because somebody doesn't get an abstraction, then you can go down to the concrete level.
Yeah.
Actually, in most things. So you were using interchanging TOA with English. Is this part of the school's program, a bilingual program, or is this something that you've identified as a need with your students?
I think it's both. For me, as a Jemez TOA speaking community member, I've noticed that our students aren't speaking as much TOA as I would want them to, or as much as I spoke when I was their age. There's different levels of fluency, TOA fluency in my class. And so my job, I think, is to expose them to the language. They all understand it, except for Emma, because she's not from Jemez, but she's picked up a lot of different words. It's my responsibility as a community member to also incorporate the language, not just to teach them, but to clarify concepts. And as a school, that's one of our missions, is to use our TOA language. And that's why we have kinder, first, second, third TOA speaking teachers. 4, 5, 6 have non-TOA speakers, but we have teacher aides in those classes who are fluent with the language, who can clarify those concepts and explain things in the language.
So they have the receptive language, but they can't produce that that language. Right?
Yes.
They don't have that kind of experience. So with me, it was kind of like the same thing. My experience, I spoke Spanish first, and then you go into first grade, and we knew a little bit of English, because our parents went through the educational system but didn't finish. So you understand Spanish, and you can produce it. But the formal language of mathematics, we didn't learn that. And of course, in Spanish there is that formality.
Yeah.
But we just didn't learn it because it was pretty much at a lower register when I was growing up. So how do you translate the formal language of mathematics into TOA? Do you do that?
You can't.
No?
You can't. Okay. Our language is a descriptive language. So most of the language, when I use it, it's more the directions, or if I'm describing something, but there are no mathematical terms that I could teach.
You had to reinvent them.
Yes,
Invent them yourself.
yes.
Okay.